let's get into the big topic of open source, something that we actually say at Red Hat. We have a
This is so
We
awesome.
are an open culture that believes
actually
in
a big
importance of
piece
What is that process that a developer, or let's say
As the
developers
Kubernetes
go
ecosystem really boomed,
Do you have a minute? Of course. We get a lot of questions.
Stuff like, how does this kind of tech work? Or how does their career go?
Well, we do work at a tech company.
Angela, you are a solutions architect. I feel like you might be able to help.
I answer a lot of questions on a daily basis, but there are other people that can help us as well. Maybe we can ask other Red Hatters?
We also know quite a few people outside the company who could help us along.
I feel like we should let other people listen in.
Sounds like a job for a podcast.
Do we just have a person just sit with a microphone talking about DevOps? How do we do this?
We do this all the time. Like the four of us, we talk about the tech industry.
So it should definitely be unscripted,
Yes.
fun,
Yes.
funny.
All of those things. So are we doing this?
I think we are. I think we should.
I think we're kind of doing this.
Wait.
Oh.
What do we call it?
This is Compiler.
An original podcast from Red Hat.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of In the Clouds. We'll listen to a podcast this time. I'm Stu Miniman, your host, and I'm really happy to welcome solutions architect and co-host of the Compiler podcast, Angela Andrews. Angela, welcome back to In the Clouds. You were a guest on the program back in the Chris Short era of it, so great to see you again. How are you?
Oh, it's great to be here, Stu. It's very nice to meet you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, it's funny. The last time you were on the program was when you were one of the hosts of Red Hat Summit in 2021. I was a speaker at that show, but of course it was all virtual last year. This year we did have a smaller crew. It was really good to be able to see a lot of people in person. But yeah, it's great to be finally meeting and talking to more of the Red Hatters. Which, gosh, I'm over a year and a half here at the company. Maybe if you could, Angela, just, the trailer for Compiler gave a little bit of intro of the podcast, but maybe tell us a little bit about, your journey to Red Hat and, what you do on a regular basis.
Well, my role here, like you mentioned, I am a solution architect here covering the federal financial space. I've been a Red Hatter since May the 4th. Shout out to your helmet behind you. And I really enjoy engaging and interacting with my customers. Coupled with Compiler, I think I have one of the best jobs in the world. My background is as a systems administrator, and I was in higher ed for 15 plus years, managing Windows, Linux, all that. And I wanted a career change back in 2018. I loved to code. I was active in my coding community. So I went to a full stack coding boot camp. And as the end approached, I was like, I'm a much better sysadmin than I am a developer. So I got another sysadmin job, and then something happened. A fellow Red Hat accelerator brought me, over here to Red Hat, and it has been an adventure ever since. So that's my origin story, getting from higher ed to Red Hat.
No, that's awesome. And, having that really practitioner experience, I'm sure, gives you a wonderful perspective as you're talking to our customers. I tell you, I've worked lots over the years with some of our government and education space, and it's really interesting. I tell you, in my previous world, when I used to do lots and lots of interviews, you talk to somebody in like government or education, and they'd be like, oh, many times you're constrained on budget, but sometimes you can actually be leading edge on technology. I had a CIO of a town that I interviewed that was just one that really stuck with me as to, you've got so many constituents, you've got limited budget, but you could do some really cool things to help, the local populace leveraging technology. And of course, that's something that Red Hat, we love to be able to help our customer with those kind of things. So
Indeed.
Yeah.
It was a lot of that happening in the higher ed space. And I was happy to be a part of a really innovative, forward moving university before coming here. So I feel that.
Okay. We were talking a little bit about, things opening up a little bit, not just doing, virtual webinars and things behind the camera or podcasts, but we've started to have some events going on. What have you done any travels recently? Any things that you've been doing?
Yes. So, was it the day before yesterday? I am emceed Ansible Automates here in DC. That was phenomenal. The week before that, I was out in San Francisco attending Pluralsight Link. Pluralsight is the big training company, and they had a really nice conference. And a few weeks before that, I was at Summit in Boston. So I'm actually getting my legs up under me and getting back out there more and more, meeting my customers, meeting compiler fans. A gentleman, I was having a conversation with him, and he was like, wow, he said, I feel like I know you from somewhere. And as the conversation went on, he was like, you're from Compiler, aren't you? And I was like, yes, that had never happened before. So I think I'm going to probably hear that more now. The more that I go out of the house, people might know who I am. So that
Yeah,
was
welcome. People will be hearing your voice and be like, "Wait, that sounds really familiar." Even though I wonder, one of the challenges I had when I listen to podcasts, a lot of times I listen to 1.5 speed. So when I meet somebody in person, they sound a little bit different. I had a couple of run-ins with people that I talked to. It was like, "Oh, wait, no, I'm used to listening to you at a much faster speed. So let me readjust what I'm doing."
exactly.
When we're doing video, when we're doing podcasts, we need to keep a regular cadence as opposed to normally, if you get me in person, I'm going to talk a little bit faster.
Oh, for
Um,
sure.
I'm
For
from Jersey originally. That's just how we talk. So,
Billy, stand up.
yeah. All right. So we want to talk to sports. So, what I love, Angela, we were looking through the catalog of Compiler, and you
Mhm.
have, a number of episodes that kind of intersect with the topics that we talk about here in the cloud.
Yes.
Kubernetes comes up, cloud comes up. So what we have is there's 2 episodes that we're going to walk through a little bit, have a little bit of conversation, and let's see how this goes with sharing a little bit of clips. So
Okay.
the first episode we're going to talk about is, can Kubernetes help people find love?
We know
So
that's true.
so I'm assuming this was like the Valentine's episode.
Yes, yes. It was so fitting. It was really fitting. A great episode. A lot of great feedback on that one too.
Yeah, yeah. For next year, maybe have me on the program when you do a Star Wars episode, because I wore a Star Wars shirt when we did the episode for May the 4th week, and as you pointed out, my background, big Star Wars fan here. So maybe if we can tee up the first clip here
Sure.
from from the love episode, and then we can discuss a little bit more.
Awesome. Let's do it.
Is potential success something that people plan for in advance? I guess I think like hypothetical success, is that something that people plan for?
I hope you're not planning for your app to be dead on arrival. I hope not. Right.
Well, I'm not talking dead on arrival. I'm talking about like a big spike in users signing up.
Oh,
like
absolutely.
unexpectedly. Like you're sort of planning for that, like
You're planning for something. You're
Yeah.
planning for some level of interaction with your application. That's the target that you're trying to hit.
yeah.
But there are times when you can't imagine
yeah.
how popular your application is going to get. So the infrastructure that your application is running on may not have taken that into consideration. Like, you consider the best case scenario, but sometimes the success of your application can well surpass that. So how do you deal? You have to have the infrastructure that can scale.
Cool. So one of my favorite things to talk about in the cloud space, Angela, right, is I think if you think about the maturity of solutions overall, and this word scale. So scale means a lot of things to a lot of people, but as I'm talking to customers, often, how do they get started? And there's a real unknown as to what they're going to need. And as the clip talked about, how do I scale up? When do things scale down? It is one of those key things that I need to think about when I go to the cloud. And one of the benefits of cloud is I should be able to scale things down when I don't need them. And if things go unexpectedly, I can scale up. What bring us inside a little bit, the episode and your experiences when we talk about things like scale.
So when I think scale, I automatically think cloud, out there in the cloud. Now, of course, scaling happens on-prem as well, right? But cloud provides that flexibility and scalability that very few on-prem clouds, private clouds can give you. So at least it buys you that. And using that cloud, as a data center really provides you with the capacity you need to do what needs to be done. So for example, in the episode, as we go on in the episode, you're wondering, well, how does Kubernetes help you find love? Well, if your app running on Kubernetes gets this huge influx of users and activity and signups, and you're planning for it, but maybe you didn't realize that it was going to go viral, having your application run on a container orchestration platform like Kubernetes, and having it run in the cloud can underpin and help that scale. So your customers won't miss a beat. They won't realize that, wow, I'm now here with, maybe thousands or maybe millions of other folks at this one particular time. So cloud really does provide that flexibility. Sometimes you can't even foresee how popular or how much usage your site, your app, or your service is going to get. But running in the cloud, we have to figure out the how. How do we scale? Definitely cloud and containers are those two tools that really help pave the way.
Yeah, well, and Angela, you were recently at that Ansible event. I'm sure the general discussion of automation and how that fits into the overall
Yes.
discussion what was a key thing, because we probably don't even talk about it enough. Kubernetes is really built with automation as, it's not something I bolt on at the end. It's, we're going to have automation. That's when I need to be able to scale. It can't be, oh wait, some spike came in, let's get a support ticket in and take care of it. No, you're too late. You're already in trouble. That's when things start crashing.
Exactly.
There. So we need the infrastructure to be able to be much more dynamic. We can't be waiting on people when it comes for that kind of thing. Yeah.
Agreed. And again, the episode, it makes it funny and approachable, and we're using the dating app as an example, but this applies to all applications. Whatever application you're running, no matter what the app size, in the old days, and I can say the old days, you would think about, oh, I have to buy enough capacity to get me going for the next 3 to 5 years. And with the influx of services running in the cloud, you really don't have to worry about those expenditures the way that you used to, because sometimes you'd get them wrong, right? And you'd run out of storage, you'd run out of capacity. And I think moving into this new paradigm, not even a new paradigm, but this shift has really given people the flexibility that we didn't have 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's interesting. I see a couple of comments coming in there. There's one that I want to bring up. It says EKS or on-prem Kubernetes. Which one is better? And Angela, I'll start. Just you were talking about that flexibility. Here's one of the things we as people tend to be really, really bad at forecasting the future. So,
or the weather.
Yeah. So, when, hopefully I have a relatively good understanding of what my infrastructure and applications look like today. But if you try to plan out, hey, what are things going to look like in 1, 2, 3 years out? All I know is we keep adding things and we need to be able to have flexibility. And that's so, we can all debate how much we're going to move to the cloud, how much is going to stay in the data center. The reality is, and I did an ebook on this last year, is your environment is hybrid today, which means I have lots of environments. And, you want to talk about scale? Let's start putting the edge into scale. I'm sure you saw at Summit, we had a big announcement with General Motors.
Yes.
I did an interview on this program a couple months ago talking about, the space station and satellites and some of the edge deployments we have. So, even more hybrid and more things that I need to be able to do. And Kubernetes is being built to be able to handle all of those environments. So I don't look at it as an either or. It's
No.
the data center, the public cloud. Of course, from a Red Hat standpoint, we strongly believe OpenShift is the answer to help you in all those environments. We can live side by side with what if you're using EKS, and we've got tools that can help in that environment. And I'll let you chime in too. Yeah.
Well, to the question, which is better? It depends. Your organization, your environment, your applications, your user base, where they're based. If it's a global company, how is on-prem handled? If on-prem handled. But if you have the cloud, you can put your data closer to where your folks are. And with the incoming edge solutions, it doesn't have to be a brick and mortar building. If your customers are in the middle of a desert or in a hospital, getting your data and that compute next to your customers, so their response time for whatever applications they need to use in their day-to-day, it doesn't matter. So it depends. It's really a personal or a business decision.
Yeah, and I think this actually tees up nicely the second clip that we have, from the episode
Ooh.
about meeting user needs and dynamic infrastructure. So let's tee
Yes.
that one up.
So we kind of talked about some of the use cases, the kind of fear of success use cases, where maybe you've already built the application and you kind of get that viral moment where people are coming to your platform, logging in, trying to use it, and you want it to scale and stay up. Another big part of the story, though, is about supporting innovation and time to market. And a lot of that relies on that same level of standardization and dynamicism with your infrastructure. So in this case, if you have a lot of different ideas, especially in these emerging user experiences, people are trying different ways to connect with customers and users, trying different features, experimenting. It's important to have a platform, an infrastructure platform that can support that experimentation and that innovation. And with a proper approach, you can really accelerate both your time to market and the ability to experiment with these different features and user experiences.
Really cool. And there's a comment from Dwayne here that if we pull up too, it said, so scaling properly should match an ROI for a customer, which is an interesting comment. I'd love your thoughts on it, Angela, because, we need to think about architecture and what costs are when we go to a cloud, because all of a sudden, if we get, a ton of, things scaling, that is going to cost us more.
Yes.
There needs to be some connection between that, the cost, and hopefully some value to the business or revenue stream that we have, because we don't want our cost to be going through the roof if our revenue isn't changing.
Exactly. So to Dwayne's point, it should really match, it should match what the business needs are. If your business doesn't require that level of availability, if it doesn't require that level of redundancy, you really can be very prescriptive in how you keep your costs down. So if it doesn't allow for it, why would you want to spin up an Amazon, type application when you may have 2,000, 3,000 customers? It doesn't make sense. You architect properly for the number of users and your customers, and you have that scalability in that particular instance. It's not all apples and apples. It's apples, bananas, oranges. It depends. That's one of my favorite words as an essay. It depends. But so yeah, that it really matches what the business needs are versus scaling and having all of this infrastructure available just for the sake of having it.
Yeah, I mean, Angela, it's such an important thing you bring up, because if I think about, cost management from a customer standpoint, the challenge in the data center was, how much do I buy? Did I forecast properly? Because I really understand what my costs are going to be. The challenge in the cloud is, how do I architect things? And do I understand the architecture and what that will mean to the costs? Because there's nothing worse than, oh, wait, I got the bill for last month and something went haywire and
Yeah.
didn't realize that, thousands of dollars more that I wasn't expecting. So getting that under control, I think there's more tools in place. There's the general, approach of like FinOps to help customers
Yes.
with that. But it is something that, we've reached a certain maturity, but there's still a bit of opaqueness when it comes to the cloud. So many times I had somebody on my team architected something and he's like, well, I understand about 3/4 of it, but I need the next bill to come in before I really understand whether
Yeah.
I did things right. So,
And that is such a real world example. Think of a lot of companies are having these same discussions, especially in that first iteration when you're architecting it out and you're trying to get a feel for, well, what will this look like? It's really hard to guess those ingress and egress charges, how much storage you're going to use, how much actual capacity you'll need from one day to the next, 1 hour to the next. And sometimes, unfortunately, in this current model, we kind of cross our fingers and we wait for that first bill and hope we got it right. I mean, forecasting and trying to figure out billing in the cloud is challenging for everyone. So, no one's alone in that, but you really do have to understand, again, your workloads and what your overall costs are, and you really try to do your best to do the math and stay within those constraints, because I've heard those horror stories about those bills. You open up your email and your soul leaves your body because you didn't realize just how expensive it was going to be. So that's a real fear.
all right. And if I have it right from the episode, the connection to love was we were talking about a dating app. Is that correct?
Yes.
Um,
So
yeah.
I mean,
Please.
how cute was that, right? It was so fitting for Valentine's Day. If you're looking for love and you're out there scrolling trying to find that match, you're quite possibly your dating app is running on some sort of container orchestration, especially when, as it said in the episode, what time of day are the most popular times of days? And you want to make sure that your application is responsive to the East Coast. And as the sun moves, that witching hour, whatever that is on these apps, and I'm sure they have the metrics to see when are our users most active. You want to make sure that their experience is as seamless and as snappy as possible whenever they're using it.
Awesome. I think that's good time to bring up the last clip that we have for this episode as to,
Yes.
meeting the unique challenges of businesses.
Okay.
You're always making changes to help users, but you're also going and saying, oh, there's a bug in this software, or there was a bug that could be a security issue in this software, and I need to roll it out. And containerization and standardizing how you roll out this software is a great thing for that, because if you're really good at rolling out software, it's no big deal to update the dependency, run it through your automated test system, and roll it out to production in a safe and reliable manner, because you're doing that 5, 10, 100 times a day. So that kind of repetition, that's one way that containers help security.
We discussed new features and how important it is for them to deploy quickly. Clayton says Kubernetes can help coordinate things like bug fixes and feature rollouts.
Usually when you've got a big new feature, and there's different types. You got a little bug fix on a single page of the website, and then you've got, I'm adding video chat. That's a big feature. You might need 10 or 15 people working on it. That's a new service, and it might be loosely integrated. And one of the things about Kubernetes that makes it really powerful is, Kubernetes is helping you roll out bug fixes to your existing stuff. But if you've got a completely new type of function, like a video chat, and that's a new team and a new service, that team can kind of onboard and they can be testing video chat before everybody sees it. So, Kubernetes lets you get the environment set up, and you can go be testing it for a limited set of users, like your beta users or your internal users.
Well,
Okay. Yeah. It's interesting stuff. Yeah. I mean, one of the things when I always hear from my security friends is, how do we get better at getting people on the latest technology? So, we can't be too far behind on the patches, and
Yes.
especially that's something that we at Red Hat spend a lot of time at Linux, at Kubernetes, to make sure that we're not just pushing people to the latest version, but if there are bug fixes that we need to have, we backport that, and that's one of the key things that people come to Red Hat for.
And as Clayton said, if containerization and DevOps really makes that possible, having that ability to update the small things, when the big things come along, you already have that muscle memory. You know the process of rolling out a bug fix. It just makes it easier because now it's almost like second nature. When we're talking about those new features, having the ability to run your test and prod and stage on the same platform where everything looks the same, everything feels the same, and having it work its way through those different stages is integral. You want a smaller subset of users getting their hands on these new features, and you don't want it to impact the rest of your production or the rest of the development and innovation that's going on. So containerization and Kubernetes really makes this possible, because it's not like the old days where to do an update, you'd have to plan for months and you couldn't do a lot of updates and you had to patch once a quarter. No, dead that. We don't do that anymore in this new, with DevOps and with containerization and Kubernetes. No, we have it as a process. And as long as you stay, that's how we keep our system safe. That's how we keep innovating and bringing out the new hotness. That's how we do it.
And Angela, it's interesting because Kubernetes is not some magic wand that solves everything.
No.
I was actually I was getting to listen to some customers that were using some other Kubernetes solutions out there, and I was a little bit disturbed because they said, well, we have the developers there do their things in their environment, but then when we want to take it into production, we need to go add the identity management, security, and all these other things, and it was a big process and lift that they had, which is not just philosophically how we approach things. Is we want your development environment should look like your production environment, because otherwise that's where we had that schism between, I threw it over the wall and something didn't work right, or it wasn't how I expected. It's like, no. As you said, today's environment, it's, dev and prod, we should look the same. We should act the same. It should be there. The whole DevOps movement was to bring all of those pieces together and bring DevSecOps in, so that we're thinking about security through the end, not, okay, we did our development, now we need to go through everything else. No, that takes too long. It doesn't. It is wasted effort that we need to worry about. So it's cool, and it sets up. We're going to transition to talk about the next episode. One of my favorite topics is just innovation. It's when we think about the cloud. The cloud is supposed to get us away from some of the undifferentiated heavy lifting, so that I can focus on that innovation that I want to create. And we're getting there. When I think about overall, how much time do companies spend on, the toil? It used to be wiring things up, and while you might not have the physical, cabling and plugs anymore, sometimes in the cloud, you can do some of the same things, that I'm doing the same efforts over and over, rather than worrying about the specific business things I have. So let's tee up the first clip. We'll get into a discussion of innovation. This episode is how bad is betting wrong on the future. I really love this episode.
This is a good one.
Well, let's talk about the future a little bit here.
Sure.
Right? Because this is something that, we have to make decisions here and now. And a lot of the decisions that we have to make about, the products that we're building or the technologies that we're using, we have to be able to look out into the future and make a really good guess about what the future is going to be. And this is really difficult, right?
Yes, I know it is, because there are companies who, you think about it, they have this product that tends to become ubiquitous, and they do just one thing. I don't want to say wrong, but kind of going away from where people think technology should go. You're heading in the right direction, but you make one false move and you've definitely fallen off a cliff. So it's nice to be able to kind of foreshadow, but there's really no way to know, because we all want to be innovative, right? We all want to be on the cusp of the next big thing, right?
Yeah.
And we don't know what that is. So someone's going to take a bet on something and they're going to lose that bet. And that has to happen, I think, in order for technology to move in the right direction. I know if it doesn't sound like it makes sense, but someone has to lose in this scenario, because every good idea can't be the right idea, right? So that's just my opinion about it. There has to be some winners and losers when we're talking about the future.
Yeah, Angela, there's a line I've been using probably for like the last 5 years is, I when I think early in my career, it was, I should have started something on a year ago or adopted some technology a year ago, but I didn't. So let me start now. Where it is flipped, that things are changing so fast that, hey, if you could wait another 6 to 12 months, there'll be a next iteration of something or some other new technology that I might want to be jump on. But I can't wait forever. So I do need to start with what I have, the here and now, and go forward. So, when is a technology mature enough to make a bet on it? How important is that in the overall decision? Companies today, in general, seem to be a little bit more willing to bet on something that isn't tried and true for decades, because otherwise you're going to be left behind if you can't make some bets and move forward to take advantage of newer technologies.
I mean, I think every successful company with a successful technology product or service can probably relate to this. And they're swimming along, they're owning their market share for whatever space that they're in. And something comes along and they implement it, they test, they do the due diligence. And when you go live, your users aren't responding to it in the way that you expected, right? So think around the same time, what if you're one of your competitors is in the same space and they're doing similar things, and they come along with a new technology product or service and they get that buzz, but you watch your users, they stop interfacing with you, they may be moving on to this other feature, other service, and you're now in the position of where it talks about falling off this cliff. How do you future proof against falling off the cliff? The first thing is you have to be nimble. And how do you be nimble? You have to take some risks, but you definitely do it with open source. So I think there's a lot of pieces in there where you have to be able to iterate and use those tools that are out there. You have to listen to your users. That's a huge part of it. But I love the falling off the cliff metaphor, because we want to get close, we want to see over the edge, we want to see how far we can take something, but sometimes we have to take those bets. And if we're lucky, and I think you'll hear this later on in the episode, where if the bets you're taking are much more iterative and not jumping ahead where you could possibly do yourself damage. There's a lot of different nuances in there, but this episode talks about all of them. So make sure you listen so you can get some of the good tidbits that our guests were so happy and willing to share with us. So,
Yeah, Angela. I've when I think back earlier in my career, if you were working on a piece of software and you were on an 18-month release train, so much relied on things going right. Did I get the right feature? Because if you didn't get on that train, it was real trouble. Or if something didn't work, then we were struggling and things light up. Today, most people are in more of a kind of a CI/CD environment. So I can do smaller increments. I can have more experimental features that are out there. And one of the balances we see is I can actually have speed while not being less secure. So that was the thing that we really look at the whole DevOps space, and what's happening here is I can move faster, but I can do it safely. I can do it reliably if I have the right processes, if I have the right culture in place. And I do love your call out for open source there. Of course, at Red Hat, we're heavily involved. And, there's so much when I look at the cloud native environment that, I live in, being part of OpenShift, it's still like at least once a month there's some new project coming up that's like, oh geez, I've never heard of that. We need to evaluate that. Do we participate in it? It is something that we will pull into our product line, and that's something that we constantly need to look at, because to your point too, if I can't respond to what my customers need, somebody else will. So whether it's something that'll be additive to your product, or eventually if there's enough drift, they might leave you to go to something else. And it in general is easier to make those moves today, ever than it was before.
Indeed.
All right. So yeah, you bring up not making, don't have to make huge bets, but if I can do it more incrementally or smaller, that tees up the next clip nicely.
Oh, cool.
Bring this to life for us, Kim, a little bit. So he's talking about doing these, what he's calling cheap experiments. Like what? Like, bring that to life for us.
It's kind of like earlier when I was talking about buying a testing environment for your applications. And I'm definitely not the expert in this, but I think what he's trying to get at is that a lot of founders get into a situation where they have not a plan, but a list of desirable things that they want to do and a list of things that they need in order to do them. And they kind of go from there. So you want to do something as cheap as possible and as fast as possible. You don't want to blow your budget on something that only gets you from point A to not point B. You want to get to the next step, to development and eventual release, as soon and as fast as possible. So some of the examples here, he talks about prototyping and testing. It's something that's really important because you also need to know what your user wants. Just trying to find out the deliverables and the functional requirements you have listed, you have to find out what users want and match those up to what you want to deliver.
Great segue.
Yeah, and so many thoughts going through my head here, Angela, because right, on the one hand, I need to be able to test things, and it needs to be okay to fail. If there's a feature that's not going to work, you need to be able to pull the plug. You need to be able to, let 1,000 flowers bloom to understand where the proper advancements are. On the other hand, if customers start using things, you need to be real careful that you're not pulling things away that they might want. There's certain technology companies that get a bad rap for deprecating technologies that people want. So it's an interesting balance. Failure needs to be okay, but how we do that needs to be done with proper consideration.
That's true. And, as an open source software company, I think Red Hat really toes that line well with making sure that we're innovating and we're trying to give our customers exactly what they need. And like you mentioned in the last segment about having the ability to, look at all these projects coming out here and picking and choosing which ones will give our customers the bang for their buck that they would really, really love. But we have to toe that line because, everything isn't for everybody. We want to make sure that we're making the smart bets on anything that we bring into our software. We want to make sure that it has a nice life cycle because we want to make sure that's one of our tenets, RHEL and its long life cycle. We want our customers to constantly have innovation, but they need a stable platform on which to be able to move and operate. So it is a really very fine line, but I think this company does a really good job in handling that.
Yeah, it's kind of chaos in many ways out there. And I saw a presentation from Red Hat years ago before I joined Red Hat that just if you look at the churn in code that happens in Linux and Java and Kubernetes and so many of our spaces, it is the drumbeat of our industry is that constant rate of change.
Yes.
And Red Hat really thrives in that because, at the core of it, our executive team always says, we're not here to create IP. We are here to everything we do goes upstream. It's that commitment to open source. So it's not that, hey, we created some cool technology and you need to use it. all of our products are based on community, open source projects. So there's users involved. There's that feedback loop with everyone there. So it's not us just saying, hey, we created this cool, awesome widget. Everybody should buy it. We are contributing as part of an overall community where there are many users involved and real business challenges that we are trying to help meet. And we know that we are a piece of the overall puzzle, even when there's plugins and add-ins and a huge ISV ecosystem out there, so that we are not trying to sell you just a stack. We have a piece of your tool chain. We want to help give you frameworks and environments so that you can get all the things you need, because every developer has their own special things that they also want to use, and we don't want to limit their ability to create and to innovate.
Exactly. And we do a really good job with our partners with integration, making sure that a lot of the disparate moving parts can talk together and can communicate together. So we play well. And I think that's really a hat tip for Red Hat as a whole. We don't come in here heavy handed and telling you that this is how it's done. We're listening to our community. Our fingers are on the pulse of the community. Red Hatters are a part of those communities where these projects come in. So again, that is really one of the I'm trying to find the right word for it, but that's like the sweet spot. That's like the money shot for Red Hat.
And Angela, you bring up the key point, because on the one hand, customers do want our opinion. We've got so many customers. We've learned from what we're doing. So in many ways, the opinionated approach that we can give them and give them guidance, but also with the flexibility so that if the customer has specific requirements or wants to go slightly different than what, kind of a best practice is, well, that might make sense for them. And that is tough, because our technology is very much our horizontal plays. So we have so many customers in so many different verticals with so many requirements. So, one of your federal governments that need to do something completely disconnected with all of their certifications, might be very different from, some just enterprise that's out there a little bit more doing things, in the public cloud and leveraging all those services. So it is challenging. And I think it actually, so it tees up, if I look at the last clip here, we talked a bit about forecast, and we talked about looking at the future and innovation. So how do we think about that approach, and what can we do to kind of move things forward rather than having to take giant leaps?
Yeah. So let's hear that next clip. Let's hear it.
I think it's important to understand that there are practices in place to get from zero to a cruising altitude, kind of in a metaphorical way, very quickly. There are practices that you can employ to find out what the people that are going to use your app, what do they want? The people that are going to use whatever product you're trying to build, what do they really need? What is it that's going to make them, choose your product amongst a host of other ones that are being offered to them? To me, that's part of trying to break down the future and trying to get away from this crystal ball mentality and going towards what I call hopscotch mentality, where you're getting to the next small kind of like milestone. Yes, at a time. Exactly.
Love the metaphor. It really brings the point home about innovation and being intentional about where you're going. So, the crystal ball method, trying to figure it out and look so far into the future, that's someone's doing it, but everyone can't do it, because that's where mistakes happen. That's making those small bets is what we're looking for. Those little hopscotch, moving to the next square, a little bit of iteration, slight innovations moving forward, pushing that needle. That's how it changes. So I really do love that metaphor, the hopscotch mentality, because you get pretty far that way, because sometimes that leap forward, it'll knock you further back. So great metaphor. Thank you, Kim, for bringing that to us. It is really a gem. And it's a way that I think a lot of organizations are thinking about how they innovate.
Yeah, and just a comment I'll make, Angela. Sometimes to be able to make a breakthrough, you need to be able to do something significantly different. But that doesn't mean that I have to take it all at once. So, if I look in a software world, I can have that sandbox environment where I learn a technology and I start to adopt it. Because here's the thing we know. It would be really nice to say with the cloud, hey, let me just throw a few dollars and wave a magic wand, and in a couple of weeks, I will have everything be digitally modernized, and it is totally wonderful. We know that this is a journey that we work on.
Yes.
We have customers we've been working with for years in their overall journey, and we talk about where they go. So once again, these are journeys we're going on. So number
Yep.
one, that means it's a continuum, and number two means, hey, let's be realistic, understand what can be done, how we need to, most companies, we need to be, the analogy there was being at a cruising altitude. Well,
Yeah.
sometimes you need to be able to change an engine, while the plane is still, flying at full speed. So that is not something that would be simple. It'd be nice if we could start without any legacy baggage or any technologies and start with the future. But, that's absolutely, something we need to think about as to how we can make changes and modernize while doing it in a proper way.
Yeah, sometimes you do need to change the engine. I like that one at that cruising altitude. I mean, open source and Kubernetes and the topics that we brought to the show today are really the backbone of how a lot of organizations are doing business. And it just so happens that we work for a company that does a lot in this space with OpenShift, but across the board, it's just the way that doing business makes sense. You know, everything can't be in the cloud. We understand that. Everything can't be, the highly scalable, highly available, because there's cost to consider. There's so many things that has to be a consideration. But I think when you work with Kubernetes and in this technology in the cloud space, it really does give you the room to iterate and make those changes. They don't have to be earth-shattering changes, but if you're moving your company and your organization forward, and you get the benefits of an opinionated product like OpenShift, but it allows you to, it comes with the batteries, but if you wanted to switch out parts, that's great too. So I think customers really do like the flexibility: on-prem, cloud, private cloud, public cloud, this tool, that tool. These are the things that are helping us to stay innovative as a company and helping our customers do the same.
Awesome. All right. So Angela, I really enjoyed going through those couple of episodes. So
Oh,
some fun topics, some deep stuff. Tell us a little bit, compiler, how do you guys determine, what topics you have, any upcoming episodes that you're aware of that we can share with the audience?
oh gosh. So well, how the show is done, how the sausage is made is we have a crack team of producers: Kim Wong, Johan Philippine, Caroline Craighead. They make the show sing. Me and my co-host, Brent Semino, we're just there just trying to make them look as good as possible because they do a lot. They do the research, they interview the guests, they come up with these really important topics. Some of them come in through emails, some of them come in through DMs on social media, and they have their own ideas. So this really is a show for our listeners. We really listen to our listeners. So we always have that call to action. We want to know what you're doing or what you think, because you know we're doing this for them, right? And our producers are putting in this great work and doing this great content because this is what folks want to hear and this is what folks are talking about. One of the next episodes that I love, 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 love. Um, we were going to call it the F ups episode, but I think legal was not feeling that, so we called it Making Mistakes. Well, we're having an F ups episode part 2. So if you enjoyed the one last week, which was filled with, to me, some of the funniest anecdotes of people screwing up in their environments and it being okay, to make those mistakes and feel safe and not have that terror of losing your job, there's some that last week's episode was super funny. I can't wait for part 2. That one's a good one.
That is awesome. Yeah, Angela, I tell you, when I would talk to practitioners and got the chance to interview them, one of the most valuable things is like, hey, right, if you can look back, where were there mistakes or something you've done wrong or things that, can you tell your peers about that? So having that F ups, as you said, is really good because, hey, that's one of the things about the internet and open source communities is hopefully we can learn from the mistakes that that others have had. So, so much there. Yeah, I think we're getting close to the end. There was a Dilbert cartoon that you'd asked to bring up related to architecture. So maybe you can speak to that. Yeah,
I would love to. So there was a phrase used that I'd never heard the phrase before. It was architecture, and it's kind of like a dig at a company or product or something where it's really not all it's cracked up to be. The marketing literature, the speak, it sounds like it's the best product since sliced bread, but it really isn't. And doing good products well is really hard. And there's this Dilbert cartoon that I saw where there was a director of architecture and he had a slide behind him that said, "Being good, it's overrated." And so it was just like, it's so funny how sometimes when it can be a catchy phrase or something that catches your eye and it looks like the new hotness, and then when you peel back the onion, you're like, oh, this is trash. So architecture is just one of those really, we talked about it in the episode where it's not all it's cracked up to be. So you really have to know what you're looking for when you're shopping around.
Oh my gosh, Angela. So that comic strip goes back to 2009, which was probably before we even had the term cloud washing, which was in the early days of cloud. Cloud. You'd see a company come out and they'd put out their things, and it was like, wait, what do you actually do? So you're right. Like understanding, is this vaporware? Is this something that they just have a architecture, or is this something that we can actually deploy? So, one of the things I love about Red Hat is, we are, real techies in the weeds. I've got one of the few shows that isn't, showing you command line and demos and everything you have there. So, Red Hat, even, those of us that are in and with the marketing org, there has to be the technical foundations and the basis of everything we do. So so totally agree and understand that, we want reality and we want to be able to help customers deploy. It's okay to say directionally where things are going, but if things are totally a architecture where there's no substance behind it, that can be a challenge.
For sure.
Cool. All right. So for this episode, I think we're getting to the end. So of course, make sure to smash that like, subscribe, and share options here. For Compiler, of course, you can get that where you find all of your favorite podcasts. Angela, I'll give you the last final words as to, people, if they want to learn more, connect and share with the Compiler crew.
Awesome. Well, the links are in the chat. You can go to compilerpodcast.com to get an idea of our podcast. They come out every 2 weeks. I think we're going to take a break, maybe a 1 month break for the summer. But again, we come out every 2 weeks with new amazing episodes. Again, with me and my co-host, Brent Simoneau. You can hit us up on any social media using the hashtag Compiler Podcast. We definitely look at those. We meet some of the coolest people through that hashtag. And you can find me on Twitter at Scooter Phoenix. I'm talking about all things tech and other.
All right. Well, Angela, thank you so much. Yeah. And to that point, this show runs every 2 weeks on Thursdays, typically. We might have, one or two, pauses in the summer just because, there are some of the general vacations and the like, and lining people up sometimes can be a little bit. But Angela, pleasure talking to you. I hope to get to cross paths with you at one of the events coming up in the near future.
Awesome. All right. So make sure next Thursday, listen to that next episode. I can't wait to hear what you think. Thanks,
All right.
Stu. I appreciate you.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us on your journey in the clouds.
Bye.